Welcome back to SwitchCorner. Today we're going to be taking a look at Lost Ember on the Nintendo Switch. This adventure experience, it's trying something a little different as you're seeing things from a wide cast of different animals. Basically you can shift and transform from species to species. Is this though enough to set it apart from the pack? That is the big question. So hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we would do here. Join our growing family and let's get started. So story, and I'm going to be avoiding spoilers here, so literally this is just those opening moments. You'll awaken as a wolf within what quickly makes it known is like a mystical world. Here a spirit, a ball of light, it finds you and it begins to talk to you with a simple question, basically, can you help me? Of course you assist, and here begins the adventure as you set out to uncover the remains of a fallen world as you're basically working towards like a final location, while not only uncovering, information on yourself, but this little ball of light in the process. Really enjoyed the story. Countless cutscenes, they very slowly, push the narrative forward, but it's just fast enough that you're gonna remain intrigued throughout. So gameplay, and it couldn't be more simplistic. Navigate this world, find these glowing embers that present, the next part of the story, and then unlock the next section, which is actually masked behind like this big red wall of light that your companion can't pass through. That's because you need to find enough of these flashback moments that make up the story to unlock the path for your companion. Now to add variety though, and what no doubt Lost Ember kind of stands out for, is its ability to let you transform from the wolf into other animals. You can't do this on the fly though, instead you actually need to find them within this world, and then you can kind of almost inherit their body. Some of the earlier examples though, birds, fish, and even things like moles, each though has its place in this world, from locations where you'll need to swim to locations where you can fly to, of course, those that you'll find yourself actually burrowing under the ground towards your goal. Controls for the most part then are all the same. The left stick and right stick, they control movement. B is jump or speed up in some cases, or even fly. X reacts with the memories you'll find scattered around. The left trigger allows you to uncover hidden secrets in the world, and then finally the D-pad, it attaches to some animations that add kind of a cute factor to it all. You won't use them that often, but they're kind of this nice little addition, just adds a tiny bit of personality. For example, press down on the D-pad and the wolf will fall to sleep. All animals here though, there's no restriction on how long you'll stay in their form, but I would say 80% of the game here you'll be the wolf, and for a wordless character is an awesome one. The controls though are for the most part okay, but I will say they could do with some fine tuning. One particular painful part for me, the left and right stick, they can change the direction you are running, so sometimes you'll almost battle it out with yourself if you're not completely accurate with both sticks. For me here, the left stick should have just controlled your acceleration, and then the right stick itself would have been used for direction. Once I got used to this, it's not bad, but yeah, it's going to take for sure a little time. Then I will say as well, the low perspective of the camera, so many times I did find myself running off a cliff because I could barely see what was ahead of me. With the world though, I gotta say it's impressive in its scope. It's kind of masking itself as being open world, but instead it's really just small sandbox maps all connected to each other. Here though, the game is giving you freedom just to explore, and that's always about as good as it gets, and for the first hour of gameplay I gotta say you will be impressed. Sadly though, that feeling for me just didn't quite last as I uncovered more and more issues the further I dove in. First off, it's not as open as it may seem, and outside of the occasional area it's actually quite linear. There's a very set path to your progression here, and while you will see things like branching pathways, 9 times out of 10 one of these is a dead end with a collectible that's hidden at the very end. You can pursue these collectibles if you're that way inclined, and there's actually quite a lot of them. If you're a completionist, this would be a very lengthy experience. This would be fine with me, but the problems occur when you see where you need to go and try to, and then you're greeted by things like invisible walls. One moment I tried to jump over just a small boulder as a fish, no good, invisible wall. Transformed back into wolf form, took maybe 2 steps to the right, and that was fine. These moments for me break the immersion. Likewise, I could actually see a platform in the distance and what seemed to be a perfect spot for me to jump into flight, so yeah, I jumped, I flew, it felt amazing. I was halfway across this deadly cavern when another invisible wall blocked me, and I slowly drifted to an unfortunate death. It took what was freeing about the game and turned it into a slight feeling of almost trial and error, as I always had that uncomfortable feeling at the back of my mind of, am I about to get blocked? Also on the world, while there's a decent amount of, transformations available, you'll always find them when they are needed for progression, but rarely just kind of wandering around. At times when I was just exploring, it could feel a little lifeless. I would have liked to have seen the frequency of the animals, the wildlife around you just kind of increased very slightly. While we are on the world then as well, I had a couple of scenarios where the animals just totally bugged out on me. First, I transformed into an animal that appeared to be stuck in the wall, tried to restart the game in this moment, and it just kind of crashed on me. I had to do a hard reset in the sense I had to fully turn off my Switch. This one's my favourite though. I found a hidden underwater secret. You needed to be a fish. I was a duck or a swan or something, and yeah, I present you deep sea diver duck. Sadly, when I got to the bottom, I did get stuck, couldn't move, and again had to restart. To be honest, like I said, these problems are not huge, honestly, but they create a divide. What the game wants to be, even what it thinks it is and what it actually is. It's the illusion of, you know, an open world that lasts for maybe like the first hour, but then it slowly, like slightly just unravels. The idea is fantastic, the ability to transform intriguing, and I gotta say, here you're coming to this one for the story. It's literally walk from point A to point B and figure out, you know, that next approach, which is really a lot of fun. But it's a story that's going to make or break an experience like this for you, and it absolutely delivers in that area. I just wish they could have maintained the consistency throughout my entire playthrough to back up what is really good mechanics. Without though, you know, talking about mechanics, let's look at performance. Alright, so the world's impressive, and I always had questions on how this thing would work on the Switch given the no doubt sizable power it requires. This is, I gotta say, a really interesting one. The frame rate you see for the most part actually sticks to the 30 or so frames per second mark. Where the game struggles though is in its loading. The idea here was one big seamless world, so the loading screens, they're all happening in the background, you know, behind the scenes. On the Switch though, this leads to moments of freezing and stuttering. I wouldn't say it's a performance issue in the sense of, you know, frame rate, but it's a restriction from the system's output itself. What's been designed as an idea for constant immersion is the very thing that leads to what causes the most breaks in immersion. I think for the Switch, the occasional load screen would have been probably the optimal presentation over these constant scene breaking skips. As I say, beautiful world, and I challenge you not to be impressed. But by the end, these stutters, you're going to get used to seeing them probably every 30 or 40 seconds. It's something that should be rare, and sadly here I cannot say that. So graphically speaking, it's a beautiful world that for me falls somewhere between realism and surreal, with an almost watercolor style to it all. Mystical elements will wash over your screen, animals for the most part well animated. And then there's something special just about, you know, sprinting around these landscapes as a wolf just to uncover that next story moment. With the restricted power here on the Switch, we've of course, you know, got compromises, and that should be expected. The animals at times, they can be low detail, as can the textures in general, but there's also a decent amount of popping. Nothing beyond what I went in expecting, but it's definitely worth knowing. Now also as well, to no doubt get the, you know, performance stable here, there is the occasional moment where the output seems to just drop slightly, you know, you get that general blur and pixelation, it becomes more apparent, like it's maybe switching at a variable rate between 1080 and 720. Again, minor things, because I want to clarify here, getting this to run on the Switch is impressive in itself, given the scope, and I think they can largely be happy with what they achieved. Audio then, and I was really impressed. The whole experience I would put on the more relaxed side of gaming, and the sound for sure reinforces this. Sitting somewhere between classical world and then electronic, it finds a great balance to present something that feels very, you know, familiar, while adding the necessary level of mystical to this unique location. Sound effects then, they are minimal and for the most part simply animal sounds, which it makes sense, you know, given the gameplay. Really impressed with the audio though, but the soundtrack in particular is an absolute winner. So overall, Lost Ember starts off well, but relatively quickly crumbles under the pressure of its ideas, and it won't be long until you're seeing the seams of this world. The idea itself is fantastic, as are the animal hopping mechanics, but once you start to encounter things like invisible walls and, you know, bugs, it takes something that's very almost freeing and turns it into frustration. The Switch build in particular is just optimized relatively strongly visually, but the performance itself is questionable, with these stutters as the loading everything occurs in the background, and that's a real shame because when this thing is locked at 30 FPS and you're sprinting down that side of the mountain, that sense of freedom is absolutely incredible. You just get comfortable with the fact that it's about to freeze for a second, and that is not a good thing to get used to. Thankfully though, at the end of it, the story did keep me locked in, and it touches on some incredible ideas, along with diving into all sort of like emotional themes, leaving it feeling like somewhat a fast-paced walking simulator. The story is very much like it's a very personal tale being told in this big world. I wish the optimization was stronger though, and I wish the glitches didn't break that high the game provides, because I can see the special in here. This Switch version though, as it stands, still needs some serious work. Today I'm going to be giving Lost Ember an above average 6 out of 10 because it's for sure not average. The passion is clear and now it just needs some fine tuning and tidying. With a few tweaks in its setup, I'm confident this could be as special on the Switch as it is elsewhere. With that then, like a shout out to the patrons of the channel who are just going above and beyond to support SwitchCorner. Truly is appreciated, so thank you all so much. Then hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we all do here. Join our growing family, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.